Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk about Mars, planet Mars, planet Mars. There's the card for it. And Mars has rulership over Aries, regardless, both using traditional and modern rulership. If you use traditional rulership, it has rule over Scorpio as well. So Mars, so in the idea of a planet being what needs to be expressed, the house being where or what area of life it needs to be expressed in, and the sign being how it needs to be expressed, right? The how. When you're doing the synthesis with everything, the planet is what needs to be expressed. So in the case of Mars, you're needing to express, Mars needs to express its drive. It needs to express action. It needs to express impulse. Impulses are a big one with Mars. It wants to do. Mars wants to do. It doesn't want to fuck around and take its time. It wants to do. Just do. It is about power. There is power with Mars, absolutely, right? There is. And I kind of talk about this a little bit more in a video about Pluto that I'll put up. I think of Mars, and this has to do with the motion, right? With how quickly the planets move. Mars moves much faster than Pluto. And I bring Pluto up here because Pluto is like the higher octave of Mars. And because both have rulership over Scorpio, there is a correlation between the two. Power is also a Pluto thing, right? But I differentiate them. Mars is like short-term power. I think of Mars as being short-term power. I think of Pluto as being long-term power. Like power plays. Let's say there's a power play going on. Mars would act in the quickest way, but it would probably be a more short-term sort of way to go about it. Whereas Pluto's gonna go about it the long way. It's in power. It's in for power for the long run, not just for the immediate future or for right now. So both Mars and Pluto deal with power. They just go about it differently. They handle that differently. So yes, Mars does need to express power. You know, power is something that is expressed through Mars. Oh, okay. Sex and libido, definitely a Mars thing. Definitely. It's also a Pluto thing too. Just in a different way. Again, I think of it more in a Mars is like short term. Mars is like short term. You want to fuck somebody and like doing that, and Pluto is more like it's in it for more the long run. So the sexuality, the sex and sexuality and libido here are they just feel like one is much longer in range and one is shorter and more instant, more immediate. Mars is the shorter, more immediate one. And again, that's because Mars moves much quicker than Pluto does. Pluto is slow as shit. So a lot of that has to do, I think, with just the actual motion of the planets, why they kind of come across those ways to me anyway. Obviously Mars is masculine energy. It is. Now I've seen it said before that, you know, if you're a man, you know, Mars can show certain things. If you're a woman, it can show certain things. we both, I mean, males and females, or however you identify, right? We have all of these parts to us. So I don't necessarily think there is a specific way. I don't think that Mars necessarily presents itself differently, depending on if you're a man or a woman, or if you identify as masculine or feminine, or somewhere else on that spectrum. I don't think it. Now, the way society responds to your Mars might depend on stuff like that. It might depend on, society might react differently to a man, or a man exerting his Mars versus a female exerting hers. A man that exerts Mars energy might be considered confident, whereas a female that exerts Mars energy might be considered a bitch. So, society, I think, is what actually, what kind of, we all exert Mars energy regardless if we're male, female, whatever. And it's just the way that society, I think, the society in which you live tends to respond to that depending on if you're male or female, or somewhere, wherever you are on that spectrum, wherever you feel that you are. Physical release, physical activity is important with Mars. Mars needs some kind of activity, active release. Now, depending on where Mars falls in your chart, that might be an actual physical release. If you're talking about like Mars in Aries, for instance, or Mars in Leo, that might be a more physical release. Somebody who actually needs to do like sports and actually, you know what I mean? And this also depends on all the aspects going on, everything else. Whereas somebody with, say, Mars and Gemini, they might be, the way that they release activity might be more mental. It might be more through communication than through actual, like, hitting a punching bag. But Mars does need a release. It does need a release. Usually there does need to be movement involved. But yeah, depending on what sign Mars falls in will kind of tell you how Mars needs to express itself. And of course the house will show what area of life. Mars can also be anger. It can be aggression. It can be rage. All of those things. So depending on, where you have Mars, for instance, Mars in let's say you've got Mars in Cancer, where it's in what's considered fall. That person may have a difficult time expressing rage and anger and all of those, those sorts of things, because Cancer isn't really a sign that expresses those sorts of things directly. Cancer energy doesn't. So it might have a difficult time there. It might actually come out more passive aggressive than anything else. Whereas Mars in Capricorn, which is where it's exalted, those people can probably exert Mars's energy best of all. Of course, that also depends on, like where it falls in your chart and what it's, what it's doing in your chart and all of that as to how that actually plays out. But there's definitely a vehicle for Mars to really express itself well through. It's well placed in Capricorn. There might be more of a strategy to the way that they express anger and rage and things like that. There's usually more strategy involved. And that's not necessarily like strategically deciding when to do that, but just there's just strategy involved with how they do it, which can be beneficial rather than just operating on pure impulse. Let me see if I missed anything. No, I think that's probably pretty good. Yeah, I think so. I think that's pretty good. So yeah, those are all things that Mars wants to express. So take a look in your chart and see where Mars falls to see kind of what your Mars wants to express. Again, with your Mars may not want to express all of these things I mentioned, and there are other keywords that I didn't touch on, but you might only find that your Mars wants to express some of those things. And of course, looking at the aspects that it makes and all of that kind of stuff will help you to flesh out the picture even further. So yeah, well, I'm gonna go. If you don't already, you should follow us on Instagram at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Paterno Astrology on Instagram. If you're watching this on Instagram, you can find us on YouTube at Let's Fuck With Astrology by searching that into the search bar. If you do the Reddit thing, you can find us on the subreddit Let's Fuck With Astrology, r/Let's Fuck With Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, you can go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star cards. Okay, everybody. I'll see y'all later.